Pranams to all of you. So this is part 7 of the series of videos that we are doing on the books that inspired me. We have covered quite a number of books in the earlier videos. Here in this video we will cover some more books, starting with the first book for this video. Tuesdays with Mori, written by Mitch Albom. Beautiful book. This book is about the relationship between a teacher and his student. You know, this interesting person, Mitch Albom, after 20 years, rediscovers his old beloved professor in another part of the United States, goes and meets him 20 years long. You know, he goes and meets the professor, and over a period of time during the conversation, he comes to know that his professor, his beloved professor, was suffering from an ailment called ALS, motor neuron disease, where the muscles, the nerves, all that, you know, as the days go by, they lose their functionality. You know, it's a slow death. And Mitch Albom comes to meet his professor on a Tuesday. They had a long conversation, very touching, very close, intimate dialogues. And he goes back at the end of the day. But he decides every Tuesday he will go to his professor's place, meet him, talk to him, have long discussions with him, simply be with him, quietly, silently, whatever, and then go back. So this professor, Morrie Squarts, and Mitch Albom spend a lot of quality time together every Tuesday. And his professor teaches him about life, how to live life, and so many aspects of life, the bigger questions of life. Every Tuesday. That's how the book got its title, Tuesdays with Morrie, Morrie Squarts. And of course, as the days go by, the professor leaves his body, and after that only Mitch Albom writes this book, Tuesdays with Morrie. It's a very, very interesting reading, very touching, very intimate. This is another book that inspired me a great deal. Tuesdays with Morrie. Amazing book. Beautiful. The next one. Of course, many of you must have heard the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Awesome book. 4 chapters, 195 sutras in total. And sutras, you know, like Tirukural, sutras, hardly a few words. But what a depth, what a meaning. You know, Patanjali begins the Yoga Sutras with the first verse, Ata yoga nushasanam yogaschitta vritti nirodha. Goes on like that. Beautiful, beautiful. You know, you can call this yoga psychology, spirituality in its real sense. Everything about the human being, everything about consciousness. Fantastic work. And I don't know how many of you have heard about this, known this. Maharshi Patanjali, as the knowers of all this, says he was not from planet Earth, from another system somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy. Patanjali, the great Maharshi Patanjali, his Yoga Sutras. Fantastic work. I mean, it gives you such a deep understanding what yoga is really. Not the hatha yoga, not standing on your head, standing on your shoulders, bending and twisting and, no, none of that. The great Patanjali Maharshi, uses this definition for asana, asanam. Stiram, sukham, asanam. That posture which is stable, at the same time comfortable, is an asana. That is all he talks about, asanas. So, that's real yoga. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras talks about the real yoga, the actual yoga. The physical asanas and various hundreds and hundreds of asanas, they're all later evolution, much later. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, definitely 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, easily, though we have not exactly, found out the date, but approximately. So, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, what a book. Gave tremendous insight to me. Amazing book. So, that's another book that inspired me a great deal. The next one. Mr. God, this is Anna. This book, it's a small book, like Jonathan Livingston Seagull and so on, small book. This again is a relationship between this little girl called Anna, who was discovered by this author, Fynn, one day. And the very close, connection these two people have forms the content of the book. And this little girl, Anna, is so conscious, so awake. She raises all the big questions of life. Purpose of being, true story of a human being. It's a very special friendship that Fynn and Anna had. It's a very touching book. And of course, you can read in that book, Anna does not live long. She leaves her body very early, which was a shock to Fynn. Of course, what can you do? Facts of life. So this book is about this amazing, very close relationship, spiritual, you can say, spiritual relationship between Anna and Fynn. And the title of the book, Mr. God, this is Anna. That's how she talks to God, whatever you imagine that to be. So this is another book that really touched my heart. Amazing book. The next one. Conversations with God. Neale Donald Walsh. He has written a series of, this particular book, which is titled like this, Conversations with God, Book 1, 2, 3, and so on. And later on, he wrote many other books, Revelations, and so on. Early before all this began in his life, he was, finding it extremely difficult to make a living, very poor, hardly anything, any money. Nothing worked for him. And one day he screamed, "Can somebody answer my questions? Can somebody show me a way that will work out for me?" And this inspiration gripped him. And the dialogues begin. He talks to God and God replies, That's how the bhava, that's how he imagines. And all the answers come. Whatever questions he has, the answers come. Intuitive answers coming from his own self. So, this is the title he gave, Conversations with God. You can even say conversations with self, conversations with consciousness, conversation with awareness, whatever. But he chose this title, Conversations with God. Beautifully written work. It's like two friends talking to each other on various things about life, about the universe. And one of the books, I think book 3 talks about the extraterrestrial beings, higher density beings all over the universe, all over the multiverse. So these books really inspired me. And he has, brought out YouTube videos. He has an organization. Amazing person. In spite of his popularity and wealth which came along, he's a very simple person. So amazing books. Conversations with God, books 1, 2, and 3 by Neale Donald Walsh. Beautiful books. So, the next one. Very interesting title, Chicken Soup for the Soul. What a title, right? Number of books, Chicken Soup for the Mother's Soul, Chicken Soup for the Father's Soul, Chicken Soup for the Sports Person, so many titles. Those days I remember when I was in Amrita University, many years ago, when a few of these books came into my hands, I read them, very inspiring, very touching, and all, real anecdotes and stories of various kinds of people all over the world. So, when I read a couple of these books, I got so interested, wanted to find out, is there more books like this? And I went to the bookstore. Yes, these books were available. I bought the whole, those days, bought the whole, I think if I remember correctly, 13 to 14 volumes of these books and put it in my university library. And I finished those books, question of time, all the volumes, and more came later on. So Chicken Soup for the Soul, excellent reading. Like a novel. You get to know so many people's lives, what happened to them, how much they went through. It gives you a bird's eye view of the experiences people have on this planet. Compared to all of that, our lives, nothing in comparison, nothing. the extent of pain and suffering people have gone through, are going through, no comparison at all. So these books inspired me a great deal. Lovely reading, beautiful books, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Get those books, it's available. Read them, lovely reading. So, the next one. Siddhartha by this German author Hermann Hesse. It's about this young boy called Siddhartha, very intelligent, very observant, very clear-headed boy. He and his friend, eventually they start seeking truth. What is truth? What is enlightenment? What is mukti? What is kaivalyam? And he goes through so many experiences, including, marrying a prostitute, Kamala, lovely book. And from her, she learns so many things, including business, how to conduct business. He becomes rich, becomes a rich merchant. Eventually, he leaves all that, and a son also is born to him in that relationship. And then he goes away in search of truth. He becomes a hermit, it goes on. He meets the real Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha Buddha, face to face. And then, to cut the long story short, he attains enlightenment towards the end of his life. After he had a bitter, painful experience with his son, the son was brought to Siddhartha by Kamala, and then she leaves her body, and lovely story. So Siddhartha becomes another Buddha, and then he initiates his friend also, who comes and meets him and gives him that awakening. It's a lovely book, especially the last few pages where Siddhartha talks about life and wholeness and enlightenment. Wow! Very touching, very inspiring. So that's another book that inspired me so much. The next one. Vedanta through letters, Swami Chinmayananda ji. When I was in my final years of schooling and beginning of college, one of my relative introduced, Swami Chinmayananda ji's disciple, Swami Dayananda ji, and that's how I come to their fold. I start attending, Swami Chinmayananda ji's Gita Jnana Yagna every year, 15-20 days in Chennai, year after year after year. Bought many of his books, and one book that inspired me a great deal, Vedanta Through Letters, Volume 1, 2, and so on. These are all letters written by devotees and disciples to Swamiji, asking various doubts and questions about their own sadhana, seeking enlightenment, spirituality, masters, and so on. And he, those days, before all this email stuff, internet all came, he used to literally write every letter, answering every letter that comes to him, every single letter. And all these letters were published and brought forth as Vedanta through letters. Beautiful, like an actual face-to-face conversation. Great deal, Swamiji, through his letters, made it clear. So that's another book that really inspired me. Vedanta through letters, Swami Chinmayananda ji. The next one. Life of Milarepa. Milarepa was a Tibetan hermit monk before he became a very renowned monk. He had like everybody else, a normal life, and he gained some powers which he misused, siddhis, psychic powers. He misused them on people and things and so on. And when he realized what he was doing, it was already late. And when he met his guru, the guru said, all that you have done, your karma, it's on your head. You got to exhaust them, finish them. Otherwise there is no liberation, there is no freedom. And Milarepa begins his life of sadhana, goes through intense suffering, all based on his previous karma. Goes through pain and suffering and what have you. And that book narrates all that, in detail. And then finally, when everything is exhausted, the ego, whatever, that illusion called ego, the me, and the karma attached to all that, completely clean. He comes out like a butterfly, fully blossomed, awakened, enlightened sage. In Tibet, this happened. This is an actual life story. Many years ago, centuries ago. So, this is another book, mystical reading, how much Milarepa went through, what all he did, and finally what he was trying to understand, what he realized. This book is all about the life, activities and teachings of the great yogi, Tibetan yogi, Vajrayana Buddhism, Milarepa. That's another book that really touched me. All of us are spiritual. If you really observe and look at people, even the so-called bad guy is in search of the ultimate truth, but he doesn't know. So that's the only difference. I'll end up with a quote by a great rishi, sage of modern India. Somebody asked him, everybody says you are God. Is that so? And that great sage replied, yes. So this questioner asked, then what is the difference between you and me? The great sage lovingly said, yeah, I am God, you are also God. The only difference is, I know I am God, you don't know that you are God as yet. In time, yes. That's all the difference. So, all these books point out to that, birthright, our seeking towards truth, towards enlightenment. Who am I? What am I? What is all this about? All of us have this. Some of us express, many of them don't, because they don't know. But all of us are spiritual seekers, one way or the other. There is nothing but spirituality. There is nothing but that. So whatever you and I are doing, it's part of the seeking. It's part of the life process. All of us are in that. So all these books that we spoke about in all the various parts before this and this part also, is all about the great rishis, all about the sages of India, the yogis of India who had come to the ultimate end of, not end, you can't say end, the eternal, that which is. And their stories, their teachings, and so on and so forth. So with this we come to the end of this video, and in the next video we will take up some more, maybe not books, but comics that touched me. So about that we will talk in the next video. So thank you for listening, thank you for watching. Pranams to all of you.